I was invited to Kanye West's mansion in the winter of 2022, and what I saw inside that night has destroyed my ability to sleep peacefully ever again. I am a music producer. I signed an NDA. I was told to come alone. What I am about to tell you will sound impossible, but I need you to understand something. The person I met that night was not Kanye West. I know how that sounds. But after what I discovered in that mansion, I have been living in hiding for 2 years, and I cannot stay silent anymore. Let me take you back to October 2022. I had been working in music production for about 7 years at that point, mostly doing session work for mid-tier artists. Nothing glamorous. I was good at what I did, but I was not famous. I was not well connected. I was just another producer grinding away in Los Angeles, hoping for that one break that would change everything. That break came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in my apartment eating leftover Chinese food and scrolling through my phone when I saw the notification, a direct message on Instagram from a verified account, Kanye West's verified account. My first thought was that it had to be fake, some kind of scam, but the blue checkmark was there. The follower count was legitimate. This was his actual account. My hand started shaking as I opened the message. The message was brief, professional. It said he had been following my work, that he had heard some beats I produced for an artist named Marcus Reed, and that he wanted to collaborate. He was hosting a private listening session at his ranch in Wyoming and wanted me there to work on something new, something experimental. The message emphasized discretion, total secrecy. This was not a public session. I must have read that message 20 times. I called my girlfriend. I called my best friend. Nobody could believe it. This was the opportunity every producer dreams about. Working with Kanye West could legitimately change my entire career overnight. I would go from anonymous session work to having a credit on a Kanye album. That kind of credit opens every door in the industry. But then came the strange part. A few hours later, I received an email from what appeared to be Kanye's management team. Attached was an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. That part was normal. Everyone in entertainment signs NDAs, but this NDA was different. It was 47 pages long. Most NDAs I had signed were maybe 5 or 6 pages, maximum. This thing read like a legal dissertation. I skimmed through it, and certain phrases jumped out at me. Phrases I had never seen in any contract before. Things like perceptual discrepancies must not be disclosed, and participant acknowledges that identity verification is subjective. And the strangest one, participant agrees that their interpretation of events may not reflect objective reality. What the hell did that even mean? I called a lawyer friend of mine, but he was not available. I had maybe 6 hours before I needed to respond, and the email made it clear that this was time sensitive. If I did not confirm immediately, the opportunity would go to someone else. They had other producers lined up. I was not the only option. The pressure was immense. Looking back now, that pressure was intentional. They wanted me off balance. They wanted me to sign without thinking too hard. And it worked. I signed. The instructions came through immediately after I confirmed. I was to fly to Jackson Hole, Wyoming the following evening. A car would pick me up from the airport. I was to tell absolutely nobody where I was going. Not my girlfriend, not my family, nobody. The email stressed this multiple times. Total discretion was non-negotiable. If anyone found out, the session would be canceled, and I would face legal consequences for breach of contract. The arrival time they gave me was bizarre. 3:33 in the morning. Not 3:30. Not 3:45. Exactly 3:33 a.m. When I asked why such a specific and unusual time, the response was vague. Something about Kanye's creative process being tied to specific hours. He apparently did his best work in the deep night. I found it eccentric, sure, but Kanye was known for being eccentric. This was the same guy who had held listening parties in stadiums and lived in an unfinished concrete dome. Strange hours seemed on brand. The flight out was surreal. I kept expecting someone to tell me it was all a prank, that I had fallen for an elaborate hoax. But the plane ticket was real, first class. The car service at the airport was real, a black SUV with tinted windows driven by a man who did not say a single word to me during the entire 2-hour drive into the mountains. As we drove deeper into the wilderness, my phone signal disappeared completely. No bars, no service, just empty road and endless darkness. The driver had not spoken. He had not even acknowledged me when I tried to make small talk. He just drove, eyes fixed ahead, hands at 10 and 2. I remember thinking that this must be what it feels like to be truly isolated. But I had no idea how isolated I was about to become. We arrived at the mansion at exactly 3:33 in the morning. The driver pulled up to a massive gate that opened automatically. No intercom, no announcement. Just silent, smooth operation like the property had been expecting us. The driveway stretched for what felt like half a mile, winding through dense trees that blocked out whatever moonlight existed. When the mansion finally came into view, my breath caught in my throat. It was enormous. Modern architecture, all sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows, but something about it felt wrong immediately. The lights inside were too bright, clinical, like a hospital trying to pretend it was a home. Every window was illuminated, but I could not see any movement inside. No shadows, no sign of life, just sterile, white light pouring out into the darkness. The driver stopped at the front entrance and finally spoke. His first words to me in over 2 hours. "Leave your phone in the vehicle?" I hesitated. "I need it for recording for the session." "Leave your phone in the vehicle," he repeated. Same flat tone. Not aggressive, not angry, just empty. I left the phone. What choice did I have? The front door opened before I could knock. A woman stood there, maybe in her 40s, dressed in all black. Staff uniform. She did not smile, did not introduce herself, just gestured for me to follow her inside. I stepped into the foyer and the door closed behind me with a heavy, final sound, like a vault ceiling. The interior was breathtaking and deeply unsettling at the same time. Everything was expensive. Designer furniture, original artwork on the walls, marble floors so polished I could see my reflection. But it all felt staged, like a showroom, like someone had studied what a billionaire's home should look like and recreated it with perfect accuracy. But zero soul. There were no personal items anywhere, no family photos, no clutter. No signs that anyone actually lived here. The woman led me through a series of hallways, and I noticed something strange. Every door we passed was closed, completely shut, and I could not hear anything. No music, no voices, no ambient sound of a house settling. Just my footsteps and hers echoing off the marble. The silence was so complete, it felt aggressive. We reached a sitting room, and she gestured for me to wait. And she left, just walked away without a word. I stood there for what felt like 10 minutes, maybe longer, No clock visible anywhere, no sense of time. Just me alone in this pristine, sterile space. Then he walked in. Kanye West. Or at least, it looked exactly like him. Same height, same build, same face I had seen in 1,000 photos and videos. He was wearing a black hoodie and dark pants. Simple, understated. He walked toward me with his hand extended, and I shook it. His grip was firm, normal. His skin felt like skin. Warm, real. "Appreciate you coming out," he said. His voice sounded right. That distinct tone. The cadence I had heard in interviews. But something was wrong. I cannot fully explain it even now. It was not anything obvious. Not anything I could point to and say, definitively, that is not him. It was more like when you see a photograph of someone you know well, and something about the lighting or angle makes them look almost unrecognizable. You know it is them, but your brain fights against accepting it. His eyes were the first thing that bothered me. They were focused on me, but they did not move naturally. When people look at you, their eyes make tiny movements, micro adjustments, scanning your face, reading your expression. His eyes just locked onto mine and stayed there, unblinking, intense, like a camera lens. "Let me show you the studio," he said, and turned without waiting for my response. I followed him through more hallways. He walked with purpose, but his gait was too measured, too even. Every step the same length, same rhythm, like he was counting in his head. People do not walk like that. People have natural variation. One step slightly longer, a subtle limp, something human. This was mechanical precision. The studio was incredible. State-of-the-art equipment. Mixing boards I had only seen in professional studios with million-dollar budgets. But again, it felt like a replica. Like someone had built their idea of what Kanye's studio should look like based on research, not experience. He sat down at the board and gestured for me to take the seat next to him. "I want to try something different tonight," he said. "Something nobody has heard before." Then he looked at me again with those unblinking eyes, and I realized he had not blinked once since I arrived. What I did not know was that the session was not about making music at all. We started working, and that is when things became truly disturbing. He pulled up a project file on the computer, a beat that was already half finished. It sounded good, professional, layered, but as he began explaining his vision for it, I noticed his creative process was completely wrong. Artists work with instinct, with feeling. They say things like, "I want this part to feel heavier," or "this needs more emotion." They use abstract language because creation is abstract. He did not do that. He spoke about the music like he was solving a math equation. The frequency needs to increase by 12% in the third measure. The kick drum should hit at exactly 120 beats per minute with no variation. The emotional response we are targeting is nostalgia mixed with unease, which requires minor key progression with major seventh intervals. I just stared at him. That is not how musicians talk. That is how algorithms work. But I played along. I suggested some changes, added some layers. He listened to every idea I had with that same unwavering focus, those same unblinking eyes locked onto me. And here is what made my skin crawl. He agreed with everything I suggested. Every single thing. No pushback, no creative disagreement, no ego. Kanye West is famous for his massive ego, for fighting over every creative decision, for being absolutely certain of his vision. This person just absorbed my input like a recorder and implemented it exactly as I described. After about an hour, he started telling me stories, anecdotes from his career. He talked about the making of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. He mentioned specific studio sessions with Jay-Z. He referenced a conversation he had with Rick Rubin about production techniques. And every single fact was accurate. I knew these stories. I had read about them, watched interviews. He was reciting Kanye West's history with perfect accuracy, but there was zero emotion attached to any of it. He told a story about his mother's death, something deeply personal and traumatic, with the same flat affect he used to. Described mixing techniques. No pain in his voice, no hesitation, just information being delivered. It was like listening to someone read a Wikipedia article about Kanye West's life. Then something even stranger happened. He started talking about other artists, mimicking their voices as he told stories about them. He did an impression of Kid Cudi, and it was flawless, perfect tone, perfect mannerisms. Then he switched to Chance the Rapper, then Pusha T. Each impression was so accurate it was uncanny. But they were not impressions in the fun, playful way people imitate celebrities. They were exact replicas, like he had recorded their voices and was playing them back. I laughed nervously. "Man, you are really good at impressions." He stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. "What do you mean?" "The voices, the impressions you were just doing." He tilted his head slightly, like a dog hearing a strange sound. "I was simply recounting conversations. That is how they spoke." That is when my stomach dropped. He did not realize he had been mimicking them, or worse, he thought that level of exact replication was normal. I needed to break the tension, so I suggested we take a break. Get some water. He nodded and stood up. But here's what I noticed. He did not stretch, did not roll his shoulders, did not do any of those small unconscious movements people do after sitting for an hour. He just stood, perfectly straight, and walked to a small refrigerator in the corner of the studio. He pulled out 2 bottles of water and handed me one. I opened mine immediately and drank. I was thirsty, nervous, but I watched him over the rim of my bottle. He held his bottle, looked at it, then set it down on the table without opening it. "You are not thirsty?" I asked. "I am fine," he said. For the next 20 minutes, that bottle sat there, unopened. He never touched it again, never took a sip, and I started to notice other things. He had not eaten anything, had not yawned, had not scratched an itch or adjusted his clothing. Nothing. He just existed in this perfect static state. My paranoia was building, so I decided to test him. Subtly, I started asking questions. Personal questions disguised as casual conversation. I asked about his kids. He listed their names and ages with perfect accuracy. I asked about his fashion line. He gave me detailed information about production costs and design philosophy. Everything was correct. Everything was factual. But then I asked about a specific moment, a story I had heard him tell in an interview years ago about a childhood memory, going to the mall with his mother, getting lost in a department store. He had told that story with so much emotion in the interview, laughing about how scared he was. He recounted it word for word. Exact same phrasing as the interview, same sentence structure, same pauses, like he had memorized a script. But there was no warmth, no nostalgia, just recitation. I felt cold sweat forming on the back of my neck. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen, stood up, and said, "Excuse me for a moment." He walked to the far corner of the studio. maybe 15 feet away, and answered. He thought he was out of earshot, but the studio had been designed for acoustics. I could hear everything. His voice changed completely. The tone was different, sharper, more precise, clinical. He was speaking in short, clipped sentences. Yes, subject is responding normally. No signs of suspicion yet. Proceeding to phase 2. Then a pause. Understood. I will extract more personal data before morning. My blood turned to ice. He ended the call, and when he turned back toward me, his face had that same neutral expression. He walked back, sat down, and smiled. Sorry about that. Where were we? I knew in that moment I was not safe, but I had no phone, no way to leave. I was trapped in a mansion in the middle of nowhere with something pretending to be human, and I had no idea what phase 2 meant. I needed to get out of that studio. My mind was racing, adrenaline flooding my system, but I forced myself to stay calm. If I showed panic, if he knew that I had heard that phone call, I had no idea what would happen to me, so I did the only thing I could think of. Hey, do you mind if I use the bathroom real quick? I kept my voice steady, casual. He looked at me for a long moment, those eyes studying me, calculating. Then he nodded. Down the hall, 3rd door on the left. I stood up slowly, walked out of the studio, and the moment I was out of his line of sight, my entire body started trembling. The hallway was empty, silent. That same oppressive quiet that had filled the entire mansion since I arrived. I found the bathroom where he said it would be, went inside, and locked the door. I stood there, hands gripping the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My face was pale, sweat beading on my forehead. I turned on the faucet to mask any sound and tried to think. I had no phone, no way to call for help. The driver was gone. I was miles from civilization. The only option was to play along until I could find an opportunity to escape, but something else was gnawing at me. That phone call. Extract more personal data. What did that mean? Why did they need information about me? This was supposed to be a music session, a collaboration. None of this made any sense. I splashed cold water on my face and made a decision. I could not just sit in that studio and wait for whatever phase 2 was. I needed to understand what was really happening here. I needed information. I turned off the faucet, unlocked the door, and stepped back into the hallway. The bathroom was the 3rd door on the left, but there were at least a dozen other doors lining this corridor. All of them closed, all of them silent, and he was still in the studio, presumably waiting for me to return. I had maybe 3 minutes, maybe less. I moved quickly down the hallway, trying doors as quietly as possible. The first one was locked. The second one was locked. The third opened into a linen closet. Nothing useful. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every second felt like an eternity. The 4th door opened, and what I saw inside made my knees almost buckle. It was an office, but not a normal office. The walls were covered floor to ceiling with photographs. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. All of Kanye West. Pictures from concerts, from award shows, candid shots in public, private moments. Some of the photos looked like they had been taken with a telephoto lens from a distance. Others looked like they came from security cameras. But it was not just photos. There were documents pinned to the walls, printed emails, text message transcripts, medical records, psychological evaluations. I stepped closer, my hands shaking, and started reading. There were detailed behavioral analyses. Subject displays narcissistic tendencies with periods of mania, followed by depressive episodes. There were movement pattern studies, charts showing where Kanye had been on specific dates, down to the exact time. GPS coordinates. Flight logs. This was not a fan collecting information. This was surveillance, military-level data collection. I moved to the desk in the center of the room. There were filing cabinets, all unlabeled. I pulled open the top drawer of the nearest one and found folders, dozens of them, each labeled with a date. I grabbed one at random, November 2021. Inside were printed screenshots from social media, video stills, analysis notes in handwriting I did not recognize. Subject's gait shows 2.3-degree deviation in left foot strike, correct before public appearance. Vocal pitch drops 15 hertz during agitated state. Practice modulation. Hand gestures when discussing music are expansive. When discussing personal matters, gestures become confined. Mimic accordingly. Someone had been studying Kanye West, learning him, documenting every single mannerism, every vocal pattern, every physical tic. This was a training manual, a guide for how to become Kanye West. But that was not the worst part. I found another folder. This one was labeled Integration Timeline. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a document, professionally printed, with a header that made my blood run cold. Subject Replacement Protocol. The document outlined a process, a schedule. It talked about preparation phase and observation period and final integration. There were medical terms I did not understand, references to procedures. And then I saw the date that made everything click into place. Integration date, April 14, 2022. 6 months ago. 6 months before I received that message on Instagram. There was a handwritten note stapled to the document. Original subject secured in medical wing. Maintain sedation until replacement is flawless. No witnesses. I felt like I was gonna vomit. The room started spinning. Original subject secured. That meant the real Kanye West was somewhere in this mansion. And the thing I had been sitting with in that studio was not him. It was something else. Something that had been trained to replace him. But the bigger problem was not what I had discovered. The bigger problem was what I heard next. Footsteps in the hallway, coming toward the office. I frantically looked around for somewhere to hide. There was a closet in the corner. I shoved the folder back into the filing cabinet, pushed the drawer closed as quietly as possible, and dove into the closet. I pulled the door shut just as the office door opened. Through the thin crack in the closet door, I could see him enter. The thing pretending to be Kanye. But he was not alone. There were 2 other people with him, a man and a woman, both dressed in medical scrubs. They were having a conversation in low voices, and I strained to hear every word. The producer is becoming suspicious, the Kanye double said. That same flat, emotionless tone. He overheard the phone call. The woman in scrubs nodded. Then we moved to containment. Same protocol as the journalist last month. Journalist? Last month? How many people had been brought here? The man in scrubs pulled out a tablet and started swiping through something. Medical wing is prepped. We can have him sedated and processed within the hour. Should we terminate or repurpose? My heart stopped. Terminate or repurpose? They were talking about killing me, or worse, turning me into whatever that thing was. The Kanye double shook his head. Not yet. He has significant industry connections. We extract those first. Full contact list, associates, then we decide. They were going to torture information out of me, everyone I knew, everyone I worked with. And then they were going to kill me. The woman checked her watch. He has been in the bathroom for 4 minutes. He's going to run. He cannot leave the property, the Kanye double said. Perimeter is secure. Let him try. We'll make the sedation easier if he exhausts himself first. They turned and left the office. The door closed. I waited in that closet, barely breathing for what felt like an eternity. When I finally emerged, my entire body was shaking so violently I could barely stand. I had to find a way out. But first, I had to know if what that document said was true. I had to find the medical wing. I had to know if the real Kanye West was still alive. Because if he was, I was not leaving without him. I had to make a choice. Go back to the studio and pretend everything was normal, or try to find the medical wing. But they already knew I was suspicious. They were planning to sedate me regardless. The illusion was over. There was no more pretending. I stepped out of the office and started moving through the mansion with purpose. If they were going to hunt me down anyway, I might as well find the truth first. The hallways all looked identical. White walls, recessed lighting, closed doors. But I noticed something I had missed before. Small plaques next to some of the doors, labels, guest suite, storage, library, utility. I kept moving, checking each plaque until I found one that made my pulse spike. Medical. The door was locked, but it was not a deadbolt. Just a standard handle lock. I looked around frantically for something to force it open. There was a decorative table nearby with a metal letter opener on it. I grabbed it, jammed it into the lock mechanism, and twisted hard. Something clicked. The door opened. The smell hit me first. Antiseptic. Clinical. The scent of a hospital. I stepped inside and found myself in a narrow corridor with fluorescent lighting, much harsher than the rest of the mansion. This was not designed for aesthetics. This was functional. Medical equipment lined the walls, heart monitors, IV stands, cabinets filled with medications. And at the end of the corridor was another door. This one had a window, small, reinforced glass. I walked toward it, every footstep echoing off the tile floor. When I reached the window, I looked through. There was a hospital bed inside, and someone was lying in it. My hand was shaking as I opened the door. It was not locked. They did not think anyone would make it this far. The room was small, sterile. Machines beeped softly in the background. The person on the bed was connected to multiple IVs. Sedated. I stepped closer and my breath caught in my throat. It was Kanye West. The real Kanye West. His face was thinner, pale, but it was unmistakably him. The same features I had just been sitting across from in the studio, but different. This version looked human, tired, vulnerable. There were dark circles under his eyes. His breathing was shallow, rhythmic. They had him heavily sedated. I reached out and touched his shoulder, shaking him gently. Hey, wake up. Can you hear me? Nothing. He did not move. The sedation was too strong. I looked at the IV bags hanging above the bed. Multiple medications dripping into his system. I had no idea what they were, or how long he had been like this. 6 months, according to that document. 6 months unconscious while something else lived his life. I heard a sound behind me, a door opening, footsteps. I spun around and there he was, the double, standing in the doorway. But this time, he was not pretending anymore. His face was blank, empty, no attempt at human expression. "You were not supposed to find this room," he said. "What are you?" My voice was shaking, but I tried to keep it steady. "What the hell are you?" He took a step into the room. Slow, deliberate. "I am an improvement, a correction. The original was unstable, unpredictable, damaging to the brand, to the industry. I am what he should have been. You're a fake, a copy. People will figure it out." They have not figured it out for 6 months. He gestured toward the bed where the real Kanye lay unconscious. "I have performed on stage, done interviews, released music, attended meetings with executives and lawyers. No one has suspected anything because I am perfect. I do not have his flaws. I do not have his breakdowns. I do not make the mistakes he made." I felt rage building in my chest. He is not a mistake. He is a human being. He is a liability. The double tilted his head. "You understand what you are now. A liability as well. You have seen too much. You know too much. We cannot let you leave." The door behind him opened, and the 2 people in medical scrubs entered. The man was holding a syringe. The woman had a tablet, already pulling up something on the screen. "We are going to sedate you now," the double said. "When you wake up, you will not remember any of this. You will believe you had a wonderful session with Kanye West. You will tell people it was the opportunity of a lifetime, and you will never speak of what you saw here." The man with the syringe moved toward me. I backed up against the wall. There was nowhere to run. The room was small. They were blocking the only exit. But then something unexpected happened. The real Kanye's hand twitched, just slightly, a finger moving. The sedation was wearing off, or maybe some part of his unconscious mind was fighting through it. The machines next to his bed started beeping faster. His heart rate was increasing. The woman in scrubs noticed immediately. His vitals are spiking. He's waking up. The double turned to look at the bed, and in that split second of distraction, I made my move. I grabbed the metal IV stand next to me and swung it as hard as I could. It connected with the man holding the syringe, hitting him in the shoulder. He stumbled backward, dropping the needle. The woman lunged for me, but I shoved the IV stand toward her, forcing her back. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I ran, straight past the double, through the door, back into the corridor. Behind me, I heard the double's voice. Calm, unbothered. Seal the exits. He cannot leave the property. I sprinted through the mansion, no longer caring about being quiet. Alarms started blaring, red lights flashing in the hallways. They had activated some kind of lockdown protocol. I had to find a way out, but I had no idea where I was going. Every hallway looked the same. Every turn led to more identical corridors. Then I heard something that made me stop dead in my tracks. Footsteps, multiple sets, coming from every direction. They were not just chasing me anymore. They were hunting me. I burst through a door and found myself in what looked like a security control room. Monitors covered an entire wall, displaying camera feeds from every corner of the mansion. And what I saw on those screens made my stomach drop. There were more of them. At least 6 figures moving through the hallways, all wearing the same black clothing, all moving with that same mechanical precision. They were not security guards. They were more doubles, more replacements. And they were all converging on my location. But one monitor caught my attention. A feed from what looked like a basement level. The image was grainy, but I could see rows of cylindrical chambers, medical pods, and inside several of them were bodies, unconscious. sedated. I could not make out faces clearly, but the implication was horrifying. How many people had they replaced? A voice crackled through speakers mounted in the ceiling. The double's voice, calm, clinical. You cannot escape. The property is surrounded. Every exit is monitored, and every door is locked. You are simply delaying the inevitable. I looked at the monitors again, searching desperately for any route out. Then I saw something. One camera feed showed the garage, 3 vehicles inside, and the door was massive, metal, but there was a manual release lever visible on the wall. If I could get to the garage, I could potentially ram through that door. But there was a problem. Between me and the garage were at least 4 of those figures. I watched them on the monitors. Their movements coordinated like a hive mind. They were not searching randomly. They were systematically clearing each section of the mansion. I needed a distraction. My eyes landed on a control panel next to the monitors. Buttons labeled with different zones of the house. Security system, fire suppression, emergency protocols. My hand hovered over the fire alarm. Then I noticed something better. Some halon system test. Halon gas, used in fire suppression for rooms with sensitive equipment. It displaces oxygen. I had no idea if it would affect the doubles, but it might slow them down. Give me a window. I pressed the button for the east wing, the section farthest from the garage. Immediately, alarms blared from that direction. On the monitors, I watched as the figures all turned and moved toward the east wing in perfect synchronization. This was my chance. I ran out of the control room, orienting myself toward where I remembered seeing the garage entrance. The mansion was a maze, but the alarms were helping. Every security measure they had installed to keep people controlled was now working against them. I rounded a corner and nearly collided with one of the staff members, the same woman in black who had greeted me at the door. She looked at me with those dead, empty eyes. "You need to return to the medical wing," she said, reaching for me. I shoved past her and kept running. She did not chase me, just stood there, watching. They were so confident in their containment protocols that they were not even worried. I found the garage door and threw it open. 3 vehicles, a black SUV, a Tesla, and a vintage Mercedes. I ran to the SUV, praying the keys were inside. They were, sitting right in the ignition. I jumped in, started the engine, and looked at the garage door. The manual release lever was on the wall, but I would have to get out to pull it. The moment I did, they would be on me. Then I remembered something. The SUV was heavy, reinforced. If I could build up enough speed in this confined space, I might be able to crash through. I put the vehicle in reverse, backed up as far as the garage would allow, then slammed it into drive. The engine roared. I floored the accelerator. The SUV lurched forward, picking up speed. The metal garage door rushed toward me. Impact. The sound was deafening. Metal screaming. Glass shattering. The airbag exploded in my face, but I felt the vehicle break through. Cold air rushed in. I had made it outside. But what I saw when I looked up made me realize the nightmare was far from over. The property was not just a mansion, it was a compound. Floodlights snapped on, illuminating the grounds like a military base. I could see the perimeter fence now, at least half a mile away through dense trees. And between me and that fence were figures. Dozens of them, standing in formation, waiting. I gunned the engine, swerving around them. They did not chase, they just watched. Coordinated, calculating. The SUV tore across the grounds, headlights cutting through the darkness. Trees whipped past. The fence was getting closer. Then I saw the gate. Massive. Steel. Closed. I did not slow down. The SUV slammed into the gate at full speed. The impact threw me forward against the seatbelt. Metal screeched. The gate buckled but held. I reversed, backed up 20 feet, and hit it again. This time, it gave way. The SUV burst through onto a dirt road. I could see the main highway in the distance. Civilization. Witnesses. Safety. I pushed the accelerator to the floor, the vehicle fishtailing on the loose gravel. I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting pursuit. But there was nothing. No headlights, no vehicles chasing me. They had just let me go. That was almost more terrifying than if they had chased me. I drove for 2 hours straight, not stopping until I reached a truck stop off the interstate. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. I parked under the brightest lights I could find, surrounded by other vehicles and people. I sat there until sunrise, too terrified to close my eyes. When morning came, I abandoned the SUV and hitchhiked to the nearest city. I have been moving ever since. Different cities, different names, always watching over my shoulder. Final payoff. I stayed silent for 2 years because I convinced myself I had imagined it, that the stress and isolation had made me hallucinate, that it could not possibly be real. But 3 months ago, I saw him on television, the double, doing an interview, and I noticed something in the reflection of his sunglasses. Just for a fraction of a second, my face. He had been watching me, tracking me, this entire time. I started researching obsessively, watching footage of other celebrities, looking for the same tells, the mechanical movements, the perfect mimicry, the unblinking stare. And I found them. A musician who used to be erratic and spontaneous, now perfectly controlled. An actress who used to ad-lib constantly, now delivering lines with robotic precision. A tech billionaire whose mannerisms changed overnight. They are not just replacing Kanye. They are replacing anyone with influence. Anyone with a platform. Anyone who can shape culture and control narratives. And they are doing it so perfectly that nobody notices. Last week, I received another message, not from Kanye this time, from a different celebrity. Same format, same invitation, private session, total secrecy. Come alone. They are not done with me. They know I know. And now they want to finish what they started. I am uploading this recording to a dead man switch. If I do not check in every 72 hours, it releases automatically to every major news outlet. It is my only insurance, my only leverage, but here is what keeps me awake at night. That compound in Wyoming is not the only one. I found property records, shell corporations owning remote facilities in Montana, Colorado, northern Canada. They are operating on a scale I cannot comprehend. And the worst part, I have started seeing the signs in people I know personally. A colleague who suddenly speaks differently. A friend whose mannerisms changed after a weekend trip they will not talk about. How deep does this go? How many have already been replaced? I am running out of places to hide. Running out of time. They have unlimited resources, unlimited reach, and I am just one person who saw something he should not have seen. If you are watching this, if you are hearing my voice, then I am already gone. Either they got to me, or I am in one of those medical pods, sedated and forgotten, while something else wears my face. But you need to understand something. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not paranoia. This is real. They are among us. They look like us. They sound like us, but they are not us. Watch the people around you. Watch for the signs, the too perfect mimicry, the mechanical precision, the empty eyes. Because if I am right, if what I saw in that mansion is happening everywhere, then we are already living in a world where we cannot trust what we see, cannot trust who we think we know. The real Kanye West is still in that medical wing, still sedated, still trapped. And I have no way to save him. No way to prove any of this without getting myself killed or replaced. This is my confession, my testimony, my warning. I was invited to Kanye's mansion. What I saw inside still haunts me. And it should haunt you too, because they're coming for everyone, and they have already won.